Hello, welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Today's Masechet is Menachot, Tractate Menachot Daf 100 Amud B. The Mishnah says, "Hamenachos v'hansachim shenit me'u ad shelo kosher b'chli yesh lahem pidyon mishe kidshu b'chli ein lahem pidyon." With regard to the fine flour for meal offerings or the wine libations that become richly impure, if fine flour, wine, oil, or frankincense was disqualified became richly impure, they were not redeemed. This ruling applies only when they were disqualified or became impure after being consecrated in a service vessel. If they were disqualified and became impure before that point, they are redeemed. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Yisroel Mizbeach 6:4. As long as they have not yet been consecrated in a service vessel and assumed inherent sanctity, their redemption is possible. The principle with regard to consecrated property is that any item that must be placed in a service vessel before being sacrificed possesses only sanctity that inheres in its value. Until such time it is placed in a service vessel, until then it may still be redeemed. Since the Mishnah previously stated in 96a that all meal offerings must be placed in a service vessel prior to being sacrificed, it may be redeemed until then. This is also the halacha with regard to wine libations. As the Torah states, "And the libation you shall present the third part of a hin of wine," in Numbers 15:7. Since the hin is one of the measuring vessels used in the temple, this verse indicates that the measuring vessels sanctify the libations, and that's from a response of the Rashba. If they are redeemed, the sanctity will be transferred to redemption money. Once they've been consecrated in a service vessel and they've assumed inherent sanctity, their redemption is no longer possible, and they are burned like any other offering that became richly impure. I said that before. Sorry, no longer possible. Ein lahem pidyon. Their redemption is no longer possible. Once they become richly impure, they may not be brought and put upon the altar, and they also may not be used for non-sacred purposes, since they may not be redeemed. Therefore, oil, meal offerings, and libations, as well as blood that became impure, are burned. In Zevachim 92a. According to Rashi, a special arrangement of wood was prepared on the floor of the temple courtyard for this purpose. This treatment is similar to that of offerings of the most sacred order that became impure, which are burned in the place of the ashes located inside the temple courtyard. The Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Yisroel Mizbeach 6:5 says the arrangement of wood. Then an arrangement of wood was prepared on the altar itself, and oil, meal offerings, libation, and blood that became impure were burned there. And they are burned like any other offerings that became richly impure. With regard to consecrated birds, wood for the altar, frankincense, and service vessels, once they became richly impure, if frankincense, birds, wood, or service vessels are disqualified or rendered impure, they are not redeemed. Rambam Sefer Vod Hilchot Yisroel Mizbeach 6:4. They have no possibility of redemption. As redemption of items consecrated for the altar was stated with regard only to a consecrated animal that developed a blemish, no regard to other consecrated items. According to the Mishnah, impure meal offerings and libations may be redeemed as long as they have not yet been placed in a service vessel. Shmuel says even if they are richly impure, they may also be redeemed. What is the reason for this? As long as they have not yet been consecrated in a service vessel, they possess sanctity that inheres only in their value, and the items of sanctity inheres only in their value may be redeemed. Kedushas domim niftin. This principle is based on the following assumption. Since one is aware if the item is sanctified and inherits sanctity for the altar, there will be no recourse for it. He therefore intends from the outset to consecrate it only with regard that inherits in its value. This allows the possibility of redeeming and eventually sacrificing at least the item's value on the altar. Talmud Harash Bash. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah the meal offerings and libations that became richly impure are redeemed? The Gemara answers the same is true even if they had not become richly impure. And the Tana mentions a case where they became richly impure, since he wants to teach the latter clause, which states once they were consecrated in a service vessel and assumed inherent sanctity, they have no possibility of redemption, meaning that even when they became richly impure and are disqualified from use as an offering, they still have no possibility of redemption. Therefore, the Tana also taught the first clause that became richly impure before they were consecrated in a service vessel. With regard to flour or oil that had been consecrated in a service vessel, the Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that they are not redeemed, as they are not consecrated the inherent sanctity. My answers, it was necessary to state that items consecrated in a service vessel cannot be redeemed, as it may enter your mind to say, since a blemished animal is called impure, as we will explain shortly, this analogy could be reversed, and an impure animal could also have a status similar to that of a blemished animal. And just as in the case of a blemished animal, even though it is consecrated with inherent sanctity, when it develops a blemish, it is redeemed. So too, these impure items discussed in the Mishnah may also be redeemed despite their possessing inherent sanctity. Therefore, the Tana teaches us that it is not in the context of the Mishnah one called a blemished animal impure. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening. All the best. Bye.